Welcome. This is the in-person meeting of the Board of Interpreters for the Deafblind and Hard of Hearing in Lansing, Michigan, January 31st, 2023. This is also being live streamed and recorded. My name is Colleen Purvis. I am an administrative law specialist with the Michigan Qualified Interpreter Program within the Bureau of Community and Justice. Thank you to the board members and the members of the public who are in attendance today, and to those who are joining us by Zoom. Before we get started, a few items I would like to go over. The agenda and Zoom information are posted on the Michigan Qualified Interpreter website, found at michigan.gov/DCHS. After the meeting, the approved minutes will also be posted on the website. The in-person meeting and live stream are being provided with ASL and captioning. People with disabilities requiring additional accommodations to participate in the meeting can email Laura-PCHS qualified-interpreter@michigan.gov. There is a member of the board joining us today from a remote location who will be participating in Zoom when we get to the comment portion. For the public comment part of the meeting, the in-person audience will give comments first, and then those on Zoom. We are using the Zoom webinar platform, and your video and audio are currently shut off. When it is time, participants on Zoom who wish to comment should click the icon at the bottom of the screen to raise a hand, and then we will recognize you after you turn on the video and audio. Additionally, board members and department staff are not permitted to respond to public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please make sure to turn off your electronic devices or mute them. Now I will turn to the department staff members how to feel call the meeting.
Good morning, everyone. It is 10:05. First, go ahead. Roll call and then we the communication policy.
Present.
Oliver Johnson,
Present.
Mitch Malone,
Present.
Sarah Houston,
Present.
Diana McKittrick is absent. Leslie Kurtz. Absent. And David proceeds. So we do have a quorum of 5 members, and I will go on to read the communication policy. The following communication policy is proposed for Board of Interpreters for the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, and visitors to facilitate successful discussion and debate during meeting proceedings. It is intended that by following this policy, communication will be achieved for everyone present and will improve the effectiveness of the meeting. Board members should wait to be recognized by the chairperson to speak. The chairperson will recognize the speaker by name and allow for adequate discussion of all issues brought before the board. At any time during the meeting, if any board member or public attendee needs adjustment in communication facilitation, they should get the attention of the chair by raising their hand. All voice votes will be taken by raising of the hand. Please avoid sidebar conversations. No comments from the public will be entertained during board discussion and should be held for the public comment section of the agenda. Board members are not permitted to respond to public comment, and public comments are limited to 3 minutes. So with that, we will move on to agenda items under 3, approval of the agenda.
Hello, good morning. This is Mitch speaking. I'm looking for a motion for approval of the agenda or an amendment for the agenda. I would like to add to the agenda. Can we discuss the July meeting for the new business? Do we have a second? And a second. Barbara is seconding that. Okay, and a motion for approval of the agenda with the amendment. April. And seconded by Sarah. All in favor? Aye, all in favor.
There being no opposition, the motion carries.
This is Mitch speaking. So a motion for approval of the previous minutes from the meeting in October 26, 2022. Do I have a motion? A motion to approve the minutes. April motioned. A second. Sarah seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. The motion is passed. We're moving on to number 5, old business, which we have none. Moving on to item number 6. We're going to start with the department update of information.
Good morning, this is Heather Hosey. And thank you all who have come today. We appreciate your time. We're going to go through very quickly an update from the department. Myself, I will start and then Larry will follow up after I finish the beginning. So, Colleen, next slide, please. So our qualified interpreter program, for those of you who haven't been here in the past or did not know, we do a few different things. We proctor our TEP and DEI exams in Michigan. We certify individuals and we process the renewal applications for interpreters. The accepted certifications in Michigan is the RIE and the DEI levels 1, 2, and 3. Next slide, please. So for those who were not here on the last board meeting, we welcomed Miriam and Diana to the board. So, exciting to have our board a little bit fuller. We do still have a vacancy and we know that there's some expirations that happen in December. We have reached out to the governor's office to try to address those, so they're working on those. Anyone who is interested in applying for the vacancy, please do so with the appointments office. For those of you who haven't been with us in the past, also we received Bureau of Community Health Systems received the qualified interpreter program in 2021. So we're coming up on 2 years with this program. And just to give you guys an update of where we're at with exams, we are up to date on exams, so that's exciting. Both our TPP and our performance exams are being scheduled and have been up to date. So that's good to see those moving forward. We did change the renewal process a little bit to allow individuals who are expired to stay on the registry for a little while longer while we're in renewal season. And so that is just so we can process the paperwork. Our team is small but mighty, so we did allow a little extra time for those individuals to stay on the registry to hopefully decrease any confusion with those that are being approved for renewals. Next slide, please. So the next couple of things I'd like to speak about are some of the items that were brought up in the October board meeting. And one of the questions was, where are our sign language programs in community colleges? So here's a list of the community colleges or in the colleges that universities that have sign language programs. So Lansing Community College, Oakland, Mott, and Madonna University. Madonna is the only one that has a bachelor's program. One of the other items that was brought up was how do we file a complaint? If we do have a complaint regarding an interpreter, how is that addressed, or how can someone file a complaint? So we just wanted to show you on our website, what we're showing here is if you go to the Bureau of Community and Health Systems, there is an icon to file a complaint with us. Next slide. And then you can select the program you want to file regarding or the individual. In this case, it would be a qualified interpreter, and this one would come up. The other way you can file a complaint is through the Qualified Interpreter Program website, which Colleen's showing here. And you can do it takes you to the same area, but you can file a complaint on the interpreter website as well. So either way, whichever one you go to, the website for the Bureau or the website for interpreters has an icon for individuals to file complaints. The next item I wanted to talk about was the substitute educational interpreters or underqualified educational interpreters. And so there were some questions on that in the last meeting. And one of the questions was, how does an individual become a qualified educational interpreter? And so to do that, they must have an EIPA score of 3.5 to 3.9 in the last 2 years and submit an application with supporting documentation to be an underqualified educational interpreter. If a school district would like to utilize an educational interpreter that's underqualified, they have to show that they have a vacancy and that they've been trying to fill that vacancy and are unable to do so. So once that information is submitted, then the required documentation is reviewed and the schools and the interpreters are approved for use in the district. The next slide goes over where we're at with numbers for qualified interpreters. So over the last few years, so from 2020 to 2021, we had 29 individuals in 11 school districts being utilized. In school year 21 through 22, we had 19 individuals with 6 utilized in 6 school districts. And for 22 to 23 so far, we had 14 with 3 districts using it. Next slide, Tony. I also wanted to go over the first quarter of fiscal year 23, which is from October 2022 till now, January 2023. Please know that this is a small number. The last board meeting that we presented on these numbers, the percentages may have looked a little different because the pool's smaller. It's only a 3-month period. The numbers may look a little different. So for the TEP results, I'll just quickly go over that there was a 52% pass rate. BEI 1, we had 50%, 2, 17%, and BEI 3, we have not had any pass so far this quarter. Next. So when we looked at those numbers in the last board meeting, the question came up is, what are the challenge areas and the performance exam? And how we looked at that. So we reached out to Texas to try to find out which is the individuals rating the tests for us and asked them, where are you seeing challenge areas? And they indicated that the most difficulty that they're seeing is with the area where the interpreter is voicing what the deaf person is saying. And they indicated this was a nationwide challenge, not just Michigan. So that hopefully that kind of answers the question. They didn't have other data on that. We did ask a few questions on it, but that was mostly the us at this time. Next slide. So for fiscal year 22, we just wanted to go over our renewal statistics. And we had 754 total renewals, 533 RID, 171 BEI, and 50 EIPAs. We also showed on this slide the endorsements. Next slide, please. And the last thing I wanted to go over was the just the last couple of items that accomplishments and updates for fiscal year 22. And just wanting to mention again that we are offering additional TEP and BEI exams every month. From the past, when BPL had it, I don't know if it was maybe once a month they were offering, but Colleen and Heather Field are offering it more often. So that's exciting and helped us to get caught up on our backlogs. We do have the schedule for the TEP exams posted on the website for the upcoming quarter. We also, for the BEI exam, have we are caught up on that, but if anyone who is ready to take the BEI exam or performance exam submits a completed application and is approved, we'll reach out to them for scheduling. And that is also posted, our schedule for that. And then we've scheduled and held exam in January and are scheduling through April, just to close that loop with, we're up to April 2023 scheduling right now. And then lastly, just wanted to mention that we met for the first time in December on our administrative rules and have a small preliminary work group that we're working on revising those rules, and we'll bring more information in the upcoming board meetings on that. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Warback.
Thank you, Heather. My name is Larry Horvath. I'm the Director for the Bureau of Community Health Systems. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the board for your service again. This is my third meeting with you, so I think we're learning a lot. I want to recognize LCC and the work that they've done on the technical side and the room arrangement. I think it's improved. I want to thank our staff, even though Heather has a lot on her plate. I mean, she state licenses, hospitals and surgery centers and qualified interpreter program, the nurse aid program. So she has a lot on her plate. And with Colleen and Heather Keel, I think they've done a tremendous job in a short period of time. And I want to thank Tammy and Craig from our IT and training program also for their assistance. I'd like to thank the audience, virtual and in person, for attending these meetings. Just from the last meeting, we really appreciate the board being a partner with us to improve this program and make sure this program operates the way it should in the state of Michigan. One of the things, I mean, the small things that we said is just getting a podium. This is kind of, I always look at the small victories and this, this new room arrangement, I think is much better. I think it was fantastic that the board was the board only has to meet twice a year, but the board was kind of energetic and enthusiastic. And now you guys are meeting 4 times a year. I have made a commitment to our staff that I would probably say no if you want to meet 6 times a year, but we appreciate the board's enthusiasm. We have a lot of work to do. A couple of the things I appreciate the team bringing the data and answering some of your questions. Some of the things we want to do in the future is talk a little bit more about the testing process, the certification process, bringing in the Department of Education to talk about their role, bringing in our partner from the Office of Civil Rights to talk about their role and how we interact. So we want to use these sessions to also educate the board. And we kind of talked a little bit this morning, one other idea that we could kind of float out there. Oh, sorry. Okay. One of the other ideas that we might want to think about is an orientation for new board members. That way we can get them up to speed before their actual first board meeting to talk about just the logistics about signing up for Sigma so you can get reimbursed for your travel, to what is the law and the statute. Because over the last presentation, we talked about the program itself, but today I'm going to talk a little bit about the law that regulates us. And I don't think the board wants to sit through a presentation every time we have a new board member. So maybe an orientation where maybe the chair and us could bring the new members up to speed before their first meeting. So just another idea. We do hear your comments. One of the things that was commented is talking about maybe are we looking for a person from the community for deaf and hard of hearing to be a staff member? And this is one of the things that I keep in my notes of a goal for us. And I think that's an important goal, not only in this program area, but in any program area in our bureau. I mean, when you think about interpreters working in hospitals, which we regulate, I mean, this is an important thing. So I think that was an excellent suggestion. So that I'm going to go ahead and kind of bore you a little bit more with kind of the orientation. And hopefully this, for those that have been around forever, hopefully this is kind of, I already knew this, but for those of you that are new members, hopefully this is helpful to understand your role. So really, we're going to really think about two documents when we think about the Qualified Interpreter Program. The most important document is actually the act itself, which is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. So that really has the strongest authority. Whatever we do, we cannot violate the act, okay? And the act, and so what we did up here on the presentation is really just kind of go over what is the basis of the act, because really the act confines us. So, you know, somebody would say, well, can we go, let's say, should we be recruiting new interpreters? How does the department handle that? Well, we should be supportive of recruiting new interpreters, but we look at the act of what is the department's role, and the department's role is really the certification of interpreters. So let's just briefly go through the act, and the act is Act 204, and again, it has the definitions. One of the most important definitions is the appointing authorities, and the appointing authorities tells you the types of providers that must have use of qualified interpreters. And so if you look at 503, some of the people that must, or entities that must use qualified interpreters are the courts, grand juries, appointing authorities. They must use qualified interpreters. 503A says qualified interpreters should be used when required by state or federal law. 504 requires appointing authorities to use qualified interpreters. So when we talk about who can you file a complaint against, one of the things we know is we grant a certification to a qualified interpreter. So if you had a concern about a qualified interpreter, you can file a complaint with us. If you had a concern about an appointing authority, I still think the law allows you to file a complaint with us to do the investigation. Now, what we might do is then, once we're done with our investigation, we might refer it on to the Office of Civil Rights to do additional work. It requires, in 505, it requires law enforcement to offer qualified interpreter services. In 506, it requires interpreters to abide by confidentiality and privilege requirements. So one of the things we would do in investigation is when somebody makes a complaint, they have to make an allegation that somebody is violating the law. Okay. And so we would look at the statute and say, is that allegation violating the law? And one of the things is, did they breach confidentiality? Are they breaching privilege requirements? That would be a legitimate complaint to us. Talks about in 507, the services and payments. In 508, the list that we have to maintain for the qualified interpreter. 508A talks about the rulemaking authority, and that's important because that's the endeavor we're going to undertake here shortly. We have a current rule set that needs to be updated and revised. Mitch, I know, did a lot of work on the rule set with BPL. Unfortunately, now that it comes to our bureau, we're going to take a revisit of that. And Mitch and Diana have met with us for the first time, and we'll have many more meetings in between. But we hope to come back to the board with a revised rule set. And there are some things that probably we're going to look at because we might have a little bit of a different take and make recommendations of why this should or should not be in the rule set. And always remember, I'm going to come back to the statute. And the statute clearly outlines what our scope is in making rules. So I'll give you one concern, and I apologize, Mitch, because we haven't had our second meeting, but I'll give you one concern that I have with the draft rules that were given to us is there's a section on adding fees. Well, when I look at the statute really already has a fee authority in it. The statute doesn't say that the department has the right to create a rule to add fees. So I think we're really constrained on fee making in the statute itself. So these are things that we'll talk to Mitch and Diana and bring to the board. 508B is enforcement. What is the department's authority to enforce the act? And that would be, all the way to revocation and limiting somebody's certification. 508C talks about the national registry and actually the fee that we can charge. Again, the fee is set in statute. 508B is talking about grandfathering, which is when the act first started. 508E talks about the initial certification and the fee. 508F talks about the fund and how we can use the fund. So that is really the act. Now, as I learned this program, one thing I thought is, where is the board? I don't see the board mentioned at all in the act. And so that's where we'll go to the next. So this board is usually what we see is a board is actually created by the act itself. But this board was not created by the act. This board is created by an executive reorganization. And so this is another document that we will put out on our website if we haven't already, but we want to make sure that the two primary documents that really control the program. The act is already out on the website. We will make sure that the order is out on the website. But the actual order from the governor actually created, and this was in 2017, created the board and well, actually moved the board to us. But your authority derives from the executive order. And as you can see in this, it outlines who shall be the members of the board. It says that you shall annually, we can go to the next slide. It says that you shall annually elect your chair and vice chair. Talks about the terms of the appointment. Talks about the quorum, the votes, and that you must meet not less than 2 times a year. Talks about the authority to adopt procedures to govern the board. And that the board shall be staffed by Laura. So this really is just something that I wanted to bring to your attention of what really governs the qualified interpreter program is the act itself, 204, and the executive board. Is that the last thing? So at this point in time, I think you have this on contact.
Yeah, that's from last time. That's just information if people are interested in the testing.
So at this time, Heather and I are more than happy to answer any questions that the board has. Questions or actually even take comments or suggestions.
This is Mitch speaking. Any questions or comments? Sarah, go ahead. Hello, good morning. I have a multitude of things that I want to bring up. I've had an opportunity to speak with some interpreters that are in the profession, especially Black interpreters. And I asked them what barriers that they were experiencing as far as passing the test. And one of the things that was brought to my attention has to do with accommodations. In Texas, their rules say on page 22, it said that you can write on the test, but Michigan, however, says that you cannot do that. So why is that? Why is there a difference between Michigan and Texas regarding that? Also, the study guide that has been given to us. People will practice the study guide and they'll think that it's great. And then once they go to the test, they realize that it is not similar. Can we create our own study guide to perhaps give those who are reading that guide what they should expect during the test? Because what we currently have, what we have now, does not do that. It does not compare to the actual test versus the guide. Also, can we get demographics? Demographics of those who've taken the test, regarding those who have passed or failed, especially for me with the Black interpreters, we would like to have those numbers. So let's start there. I've got more, but let's start there.
This is Heather speaking, just to address the first comment that you had regarding whether or not we could write on the exams, the TEP exam you're referring to. That was actually
Yes.
brought to our attention. And so we did change the exam to allow for that. Other two items. I think we can take that back and discuss it. I think it's a great idea to study that. I'm not sure the logistics of that, and so we can look into that for sure.
I do have a question for the board on the demographics. I think that's an excellent idea to collect more data. I can think of demographics being race and ethnicity, geographical locations. Is there any other attribute that the board would like us to collect?
This is April. I would love to know if the person went to an IDP and which college or university they went to and if they graduated. This is Mitch speaking. Any additional comments or recommendations specifically to the demographics? Speaking to that.
Could I? Sorry.
I have another question. Just for clarification from Sarah. So when you're speaking to the study guide, you said that it does not reflect the test. Does that mean the TEP? Is that what you were speaking to? The written exam, that's what you're referring to. Okay. So my understanding is that the practice exam was developed in Texas. And I went to a presentation when Texas had come here to bring the BEI. When that first started, I do recall this. I believe I recall them saying when Texas had originally started with the program to do a pilot to see if this test would be effective, I believe they did test people, not for a pass fail, but to see if there were any questions or whether their pass fail, or if it was 90% of them had gotten it correct or all of them had passed. And they removed that question from the TEP, the question that was, because it was too easy. So if they use that removed question, and then they put that onto the practice exam. So the question that everyone is passing, they removed it from the practice exam and then put it on, or from the actual exam and moved it to the practice exam. So it does make the test seem quite easy because of the guide. It is misleading. That's the information that I have is that. Go ahead, Larry.
Just going back to the demographics to explore that. We will come back at the next meeting with a set of demographics to see if that would meet the board's idea. And I'm assuming that the demographics would be something that we would kind of give them a sheet to fill out at the beginning prior to the test, and it would be voluntary. Is that what we're thinking?
Voluntary.
So we will bring that to the next board meeting, because I think the more data we have, the better we are going to be in serving our community. I want to go back to the question on accommodations. I know we talked a little bit about writing on the test, and Heather has kind of addressed that. Were there other areas of accommodations that were raised that might be helpful to us?
Yes, this is Sarah speaking. The folder or the file, the portfolio, the protector, it has a glare on it. And so if it could be removed from the protector, if the test could be removed from that protector because of the glare, it said that it could not be removed. So I think that was brought up to me, and I think that's it with the accommodations. If I think of any more, I'll let you know. Also, I did have one more question relating to the test itself. I have another question, but it's not relating to the test. Why is it that you have to wait 6 months to take the written test again? Is there, I don't think that's needed to wait 6 months for a written test. 6 months for the performance portion of the test, that does make sense to me. But as far as, you know, like if you're taking the BEI 1 and you're working on it, you're ready to take the second, the BEI 2, you don't pass it, then you need to go back and work again on upping your performance with that. But for 6 months on the written portion, I feel like it's a big holdup for being able to pass and move on with the process. Because if you don't pass, you can study and maybe in 1 month be ready to take the written again, but 6 months feels like a long time. And I'm not sure if that's really necessary. I don't think that should be a part of the written portion of the exam. The performance, I completely understand and agree with that, but for the written, I do not.
Now, this is Larry. I'm gonna make one comment, then I'll turn it over to Heather. The good news is this, the statute, the act, and the executive order really does not provide any limitations on what we do with the testing. So that's the good news. I think where we will probably struggle is with our contract with Texas and what are their limitations. But I just appreciate this feedback because this is exactly what the board is designed to do, to give us this insight in how we can make this program better. So Heather, you want to talk?
Sarah, I'm glad you brought up about the exam, the glare. That was addressed as well, because that came up to us as well. So Colleen, can you just confirm that's been taken care of, right, with those protective sheets?
Yes, so we make copies, so they get a copy that they can write on now. And it's not in the folder. We agree with you. So we fixed that. We also notified Texas that we're doing that. Texas changed that. And we did send a revised study guide to Texas. They actually. So that's how it's been done in the past.
So it's the 6 month waiting period. I believe that's a Texas requirement. Is that correct? Because we've asked questions similar. And so fortunately, that's a requirement by Texas and the owners of the exam. But thank you for that.
Okay. This is Mitch speaking. You mind contacting Texas and possibly getting information from them about their reasoning behind the 6 month waiting period? Would that be all right?
We can act, this is Heather, absolutely, we can reach out to them and see if there's some rationale.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, this is Sarah again. We were talking about education, educational interpreters under the qualified interpreters. Under qualified educational interpreters. Do the parents have to approve a waiver first? For their child to, or for their school system to decide that their child will get an underqualified interpreter?
I'm gonna defer to Colleen on that. I'm not well versed on that. Do you know, Colleen, or is that a different education?
So depending on what is waiver, the school district exception requires that the parents have met the school individualized education program. That is the requirements, but there is a waiver on the website that asks for the, there's 2 forms that were created. I believe with the Attorney General's office and then perhaps the Department of Civil Rights, that they were creating their. That waiver is on our form, and that is something between the entity and the adopted. child. So it's a waiver. That's language that's maybe.
Yeah, that waiver is more for general use. If, you know, if somebody's going to the hospital and there's an interpreter, and so a person says, I'm gonna bring my cousin to interpret for me, then they sign a waiver. This is for education for the underqualified interpreter working in the educational system. Please, Mitch, clarify, this is my understanding, but correct me if I'm wrong. That school district decides, but do the parents have to sign up on that waiver first? This is Mitch speaking. So my current understanding of the rules, the current rules, they don't really have to sign. The parents don't really have to sign. They're supposed to come together at the IEP meeting and discuss it. And I mean, this is in the perfect world, right? So the school will have the parents and everybody involved in the child's education at a meeting where they would discuss everything and say, you know, we really want a qualified interpreter who's on par for education, and you know, what are our other options? Do they go to residential school? Do we look for a different district that's closer or farther that might have qualified interpreters? Or do we think that this school district is the best placement for our child? And do we think that an underqualified interpreter is still the best placement, better than the other options that we've discussed, residential school or another school district? So that's supposed to happen in the real world, in perfect world, but we're talking about real world, right? So I think the rules, the draft of the rules, we want to add the language to it that, you know, and Larry's looking at me right now, I can tell. Because he wants to know what the law is going to allow here, but we can discuss that too. But yes, I have big concerns about that as well, about the underqualified interpreter use in the educational system. This is Sarah speaking again. Just to put this on the record for today, I would say 75 to 80% of parents are not involved in the IEP process. With it, you know, the IEP process goes on without the parents there. And I was an educational interpreter for 7 years. I get it. And I just want to put that on the record. Okay. So, okay. I have a couple more. Oh, this is April. I just want to add something about that specifically before we move on to something else. When the school fills out the requirement for that approval, is that every year that they have to prove that, again, we tried to find a qualified interpreter, but we couldn't find one. So we'll go ahead with an underqualified interpreter. Do they have to approve that every single year? Or is it just one time that they have to prove that they looked for a qualified interpreter and then they never have to renew it?
So it's approved for the school district year. It's my understanding, correct, Colleen? Is that right? Okay, just to make sure I was correct on that. And we did ask the Department of Education to come to one of our board meetings, so we're waiting to hear which one works best for them, because I think this would be great for them to hear some of these comments and the feedback that we're receiving, especially the comments, Sarah, about, you know, parents not being involved, and they should be, you know, involved in that process and know that their children have an underqualified interpreter that the community is searching for in the school, and what their efforts are to fill those vacancies with qualified interpreters. So I agree. And this, I think, would be great information to share when they do come, and we'll update the board when we hear back from them on the date that works for them, on which board meeting can come to. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Miriam, I'm Valerie speaking. Question, do we gather any sort of data as far as educational underqualified interpreters and how many students and families are being impacted, or how many families, or again, the student is having to communicate or receive information through an underqualified interpreters, how many or a different set of data as well as to how many times are we using a qualified versus an unqualified? And are we keeping track of, is this getting better throughout the years, or is this getting worse? How do we have a good control?
This is Heather speaking. I do not believe we have any data on that. I think that's a great suggestion. We can look into collecting that data. Kind of the demographics that was discussed earlier, that maybe we could take this in and collect demographics on it as well. The data that I presented in slide, the update from the department was all the data that we have on underqualified interpreters at this time. But I think it's a great suggestion.
This is April speaking. So this is again with the educational interpreter discussion. The 3.5 to 3.9 is underqualified. We have interpreters working in the school with less than a 3.5 who are not licensed and not in the LARA database. And we can't follow them and see what's going on with their profession or how they're progressing. So is it the school's responsibility or the interpreter's responsibility? If they're not in the system, we can't manage them or file a complaint. If we need to file a complaint, then how do we do that? Is it the parents? And like Sarah said, often the parents don't even know. Is it other interpreters? Is it the community? What would that process look like?
This is Heather speaking. That's a great question or questions. Yes, you can absolutely file a complaint on our website, even if they're not qualified, and we can look at it and see what's happening. I don't think we keep track of those that are less than 3.5. Connie, do you know if MDE keeps track of that, or who? If anybody does, or are we not sure? Is that something we need to go back and look at?
We can. If they haven't filled out any kind of licensure under LARA, then how are they monitored? How are they followed? How are they tracked? It's impossible.
Do you want to take that one, Colleen, or is that we need to look into this a little bit more?
Yeah, we could, well, so we're governed by the statute and rules, and the rules don't allow educational interpreters to be qualified, so.
Now, let me just add, this is Sarah. We know what's happening right now currently with the federal Supreme Court in Michigan. We had a student that they got an interpreter, quote unquote interpreter, who had learned from a book and was in the school system. And now that is in the federal Supreme Court hearings. And so that's happened. It's happened now here in our state. So what are we going to do? What is our responsibility to make a change? We are the interpreter board. So this student's interpreter had learned signs from a book. And so we can't keep saying, well, we don't know about that, or we don't know about that. Like, this is going all the way up to the federal Supreme Court. So we can't say that we don't know, because it's here in front of us and it's happening. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. This is Mitch. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to add a question about the educational system. Thank you for the slides. This one. Really appreciate that. I really like seeing how many school districts did comply with the rules and the regs, and you asked for the information, you got the information, and they are using underqualified interpreters. We see it right here, but my guess is that these school districts, maybe 10% of school districts are actually understanding the rules and understanding that it's their duty and obligation to report. The other 90%, yeah, not doing anything. I mean, just, we can guess what they're doing. So really, that's a comment, but not a question. So my question goes to, we see the numbers and it seems like these numbers are decreasing. And with my experience, my gut instinct, are those schools just deciding we're not going to report it again? We did last year, but we don't have to report it every single year because we reported last year. I'm just curious, compared to, we've got 11 in 2020 and 2021, the school year. Then the next year, there's 6. So what happened to those other 5? Did the deaf student graduate? Did the interpreter become qualified? Did they hire a new interpreter who was qualified? So I'm just curious what happened to the other year, the 11, then we've got 6, then we've got 3. So what happened to those discrepancies in numbers? Did they possibly send them to a new school? Did they send them to residential school? I'm just curious. Larry's looking at me again. I'm getting the stink eye. I know, no. But, I'm giving you guys a lot more work to do. I get that, but I'm just curious if that's a possibility. If we can find the research data on what they are doing. And I think what Miriam was talking about with, we want to recognize the school districts who have qualified interpreters and maybe understand their process and how they found their qualified interpreters so that other schools can, so they can help each other, so the school districts can help each other. And the BCHS and the QI program, maybe maybe it's not their issue, maybe it's an MDE issue. But we can make motions, supports, recommendations to MDE and what they can do, how we can help MDE figure out how to get these numbers up again.
Absolutely. I think this is Heather speaking. I think those are great suggestions and things that we do need to partner with MDE on. Unfortunately, we don't have the solutions today, but I will say that I think these are great things to bring up, and I do hope that we could partner with MDE and reach out to them and try and find out if we can get some of these statistics. And also, is there education that needs to be done with the school districts to say, this is what you're supposed to report, and this is what you're are required to report, I guess, and ask those additional questions and see what we can find out. Thank you.
Great.
Just one brief comment. One is we have to provide you guys with data. This is how you guys are going to make informed decisions. So these kind of questions make us go back and get the data. And then we have to keep that data up and current, so and we're going to expand that because the best decisions are made based upon good quality data. The other thing I want to just briefly mention is as we work on these rules, I want the board to start to think about when we're done with the rules. Because I think the next real step is we need to do education. And we talked about this with Diane and Mitch. The Bureau is committed to doing education to the interpreter community, because obviously this impacts them. The deaf and hard of hearing community. But then what other communities do we need to educate them on this process? The schools is one, the courts, the health systems. So think about what groups we need to target as we start to roll this out, because even though 90% of the rules are going to really affect the interpreters themselves, there's other stakeholders in these rules and that's why we're designing this. We kind of put the interpreters at the end because we really wanted to kind of get to the community first of what is my rights? How do I file a complaint and everything like that? Because the interpreters, to keep their certification, they're going to read the whole document. They have to. The community might get bored by the time they get to page 8. So we're working with Mitch and Diana to design this in a way to what audience are we trying to reach at what stage and at what time. So kind of think about that as, beyond the rules. Once we get them ready, who do we educate? Because I think we need a new effort. So thank you, guys. Very valuable discussions, and we will come back with more information.
This is Sarah. 2 more things. I want to know what the process is to get Mirrid involved here as an ex officio member. Also, the last question I have, a personal question here. Is there anything in the rules that say that a sitting board member cannot take in their next level of testing? Somebody had proposed that they questioned whether or not I could take the next level of testing. So we weren't sure because I know other boards have that role where a sitting board member cannot do that. And I would like to advance my testing. So if someone can answer that, I would like to become a master interpreter. So I think that's it for me.
I do not have any issues to those two. Heather or
I'm not wearing. Communication.
Great.
but we will go back and just verify and then get that back out to you, just to make sure that we are 100% correct on this.
Okay. Also Mirrid.
I have that noted. I don't know if we don't have an answer today, but we have that noted to bring back to the, we'll do the research and bring back our thoughts. And
The reason for asking is because at another public meeting, Mirrid had come in and spoke to them and worked with them. And I thought, well, okay, we are the interpreting board. That would be appropriate to have Mirrid here in order to inform us of what's going on. And we need to be able to work with them and have that partnership to help develop interpreters in our profession. I'm done. This is April speaking. One more question here. This question is coming from the college perspective. As far as the BEI requirements, it requires one to have an associate's degree. I'm curious as to the specific rule for that. Is it required for the TEP or is it required for the performance portion of the exam, or is it both? That you must have an associate's degree? Because if you pass a TEP, it's not like you could interpret anyways. That would just be the foot in the door. You would still have to have your associate. So where does that barrier occur?
This is Heather speaking. I believe it's for both. We have reached out to, was it Texas Colleen, about taking it if somebody's like in their last semester of the TEP. Have you been able to move that forward or not quite yet?
So we developed that procedure that it's on our website. There's a form if you instance wanting to take it to watch measure the session. We don't send the person these slides. That was it's on our website. It's a procedure.
This is April. Yes, that is helpful. I understand what you're saying. However, the waiting for the results, I understand that, but the student wouldn't know if they passed or failed if they aren't getting the results. So they'll be practicing and studying for an exam that they may or may not have passed. That way if they knew that they had passed, then they could focus on the performance portion of the exam as opposed to continuing to study for the written exam. But like Sarah had mentioned, for the TEP, if you have to wait a 6-month period, we understand that's part of the rules, but say someone fails and they're still a student, then you have this 6-month timeline where they're not credentialed, they can't practice. So once they're graduated, they're not getting the hands-on experience or that practice that they might need. So if we shorten that span of the 6 months, but in order to shorten the wait, to see if we can get the process moving for them once they've graduated to become the pathway between getting graduated and becoming a certified interpreter.
This is Heather speaking. I think that's a great suggestion. I'll be honest, I was excited that we got it pushed ahead for the associates.
As was I.
Yeah, so, but I think it's a good point that, what do they study for next and what are they preparing for next? And so, that's something we can look at. I said that several times today, but we can look at that and take it back and get back with you on if there's any flexibility in that.
Thank you. This is Mitch speaking. For my own clarification here. So the requirement for the associate's degree, is that a Texas requirement? Is that under our contract because of Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, is it not Colleen? Sorry, I'm glad Colleen's here to jump in.
It is.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So that's something that we could address with the draft. That's something that we could address with the new draft if we wanted to revise something there.
And if I remember correctly, actually, now that Colleen says it's in a rule, that was looked at previously with BPL and there was a workaround, so we can revisit that with Diana and Colleen and everybody on the work group right now to try to see how we can fit that in, because I think that's a great suggestion. I'm glad that it's in rule as well, so we can try and be flexible with that.
Mhm. Thank you. Any other last questions for these two?
Just going
Miriam?
back to, this is Miriam speaking, going back to the data and the accountability from our school systems, our medical legal system, and the compliance with the requirements. As far as the report of, of each of these systems, if we, can ponder on how, I know Larry talked about educating our systems, which will then bring some sort of accountability. I can speak for the medical. That's my area of service, and I can tell you when we have an interpreter come to the premise and provide services, the patient has the opportunity to decline, to refuse the interpreter service, but it's still up to that provider, to the medical provider, to decide if they want to put their license on the line by having somebody else that we don't know what type of clinician they have, or use the service of an ad hoc or somebody that you have no reference, right? No. So there's that fear of I might get in trouble. Obviously, this is a system of now 60,000 employees, right? So, but that we have a language services department, and trying to get the word and that education to each of these departments is it's hard. But there's also, that structure of, okay, if a patient has a complaint, we encourage our patients to our patient relations, file a complaint, Office of the Civil Rights. It comes back to us, and we encourage that culture for patient sake. So there's that motivation in a way um, to provide optimal services to our patients. So I think about, yes, the school system and education, life and death here in the medical industry, but also education is important. And how do we, so just going back to, I try to just have a little bit of a structure of just thinking from the system I come from and how the school system is business, and like Mitch shared earlier, how do we know who is doing it right? How can we learn from the different school systems or schools to share the wealth with other systems in the same industry? So yeah, so education is important, but also accountability. Because if we continue to receive the same reports in lesser and lesser numbers, and we don't know what's happening, and we're just getting the numbers, but we're not having any actions, then what improvement are we making? So just to stay closer to that thought of education, and also while we're educating, we understand these are laws we're needing to follow. If we receive federal funding, what type of consequences are we going to have if we don't? If we continue to just use the service of an underqualified interpreter, until what point do we need to get a consequence? So it's more of a comment, not thought, as we continue to make a more to have a better order and providing services to our community members. I had one more question on this. I don't know if this would be there would be an answer for this, but I noticed the Michigan College programs for sign language interpreters, Lansing, Oakland, Madonna. I know there are other colleges and community colleges that have a few classes available. Do we know of any other associates or bachelor's programs that we could probably I connect with other colleges or just expand these programs in other areas other than the four that are in?
Colleen, do you know if you got that information from MDE? Where was that obtained?
We basically just researched that on our own, and you are right, there are some other colleges that offer classes. So these were the programs we found.
That actually offer degrees in
Yeah.
the industry versus basic classes that transfer to those areas.
Take it back and it's search class.
Just to see, because I think what would it take to expand the programs to other areas? Instead I think of Grand Rapids, and having to drive to Lansing every how often to obtain a certification for an associate's in this field. How accessible are this program? And then the other question was more on the statement of complaint. Is this complaint form against the interpreter themselves, or is it also to the system or organization that should be required to provide qualified interpreters?
So the complaint form is against qualified interpreters. If, let's say, a hospital was using somebody that wasn't qualified, then we would file a complaint regarding the hospital, which is the website that I showed in the PowerPoint. If you click file a complaint, it asks you, what are you wanting to file a complaint against? And so that form that I showed was regarding just the interpreters, but there is an avenue to file complaints. Let's say the hospital is using somebody underqualified or the still license C's, so we could file complaints in whatever area that was appropriate.
Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you both. This is Mitch speaking. The next item is discussion about the July board meeting. And I will pass this over to April. April? This is April speaking. I noticed that July 26th is the day that's set for the board meeting, but it's also the first day for the National Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, the convention. So it's not fair to ask individuals to have to pick between the two. So we were looking into moving this meeting either before or after.
This is Heather speaking. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we wanted to propose that a July 19th date to the board. If that would work better. So any interest in moving it to July 19th? Or
This-
sorry, Mitch, or is it just a busy month? I know there's a holiday. We looked at other dates. So what we came up with was July 19th, if that works for the board.
This is Mitch speaking. We can make a decision today, or we can discuss what would be the pros and cons of postponing or moving the meeting back. Any comments from the board regarding the July 19th?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. Other options, or would we like to keep the July 19th? This is April speaking. I would also like to hear from Diana as well, the Sikhs. I know that she's not seated here today, but I want it to be as accessible for as many board members as possible. We can communicate now or via email, we can make that decision later if the board would prefer.
This is Miriam speaking. So I printed off the dates and maybe I have the wrong document. So the next one I have is April 18th.
Mhm.
And then July 26th. Which is the one
Correct.
everyone.
That's right. This is April. And we have time to discuss it. We don't have to decide today. But yeah, it's the question about the July 26th. The April date is completely fine. It's just the July 26th one may be a conflict. This is Mitch speaking. My opinion, I think we can take more time to discuss it over email. And we could ask other board members who are not here, Diana, Leslie, Jonathan, if we have any new board members, hopefully by July, then we could talk to them too. So my recommendation is to table this discussion and talk about it later. Support, second, okay. That's what we'll do. Anybody disagree or? This is April. I don't disagree, but how long do you need before setting up that date and promoting it and putting out all of the announcements about what the date's gonna be? When do we need to decide by?
This is Helen speaking. So we can do it. We just, anything, yes, we want to change the date. So then we post it on our website and also post it change the date. So a week would be multiple or as much time as you can.
Okay. I think this is
Great.
Heather speaking. I think we know that the more time, the better, obviously, so we can post to the community and notify everyone who'd like to know. So, but that, like Colleen said, there is somewhat of a process, but we're flexible with this. So we're, we'll be supportive.
I was, actually, I think it's 10 days.
This is Mitch speaking. I have a question. I think it's a legal question. Can the board discuss that July date via email and then decide via email? Or is it required for us to have a motion and a vote of approval at a meeting?
So. That's- Email is not enough. In my opinion.
This is Sarah speaking. Yeah, I think we have enough time to figure it out by the next board meeting, and then we can talk about it then, and we can decide. We have enough time. And enough of us we can talk to the people who aren't here and, yeah, because 2 weeks will not enough time. You'll definitely want more time than that to secure interpreters and all of that, so. This is Mitch speaking again. So do we need to vote that we're going to table that discussion until the next meeting? This is Mitch. So we have a proposal to table this discussion. I have a second from Barbara. Any discussion about it first? Okay, so we're going to close the voting. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None, seeing none, the proposal passes. I believe it's time for public comment. Department will take care of that.
Do we have any public comment cards from the audience? And would like to see. Two. Okay, this is Colleen speaking. For the public comment in the audience today, we have Bethany Faulkner.
My name is Bethany Faulkner. I manage the Interpreter Services Department for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services on the west side of the state. I just want to start a conversation or get more involvement for the BEI 1 gap between the 1 and the 2. We are looking at setting up a medical internship on the west side of the state to help the ones up their skills and get the medical knowledge that they need to be able to get the 2 and the endorsement. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself and say what big ideas we're trying to develop on the west side.
Thank you. Next we have Deb Atwood.
Good afternoon. So Mitch, whenever you're ready to give me the stink eye, just let me know if I go too long, because you know I always go too long, but that's my job and that's great. Deb Atwood, Executive Director, Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, West Side of the State. I first want to thank each and every one of you and for the fabulous job that you're doing. It is so wonderful to sit here and listen to all this. And Bethany are going, yeah, yes. Thank you. Thank you for getting it. And you know what I mean when I say getting it, for understanding it and being down on the ground with your boots flowing and with your kiddos and your students and all of that, and bringing in the legal piece and Laura getting it and understanding it. Thank you for that, because it's a lot of hard work and we get that. And we want that to go that way. My management style is it a performance problem or is it a training problem? So I think that's what we're going to get down to with everything going on. Is it a performance problem where we, we were trained properly, but we didn't really understand what we were supposed to do, and so we don't know how to do it? Or is it a performance problem? Which is it? We have to educate these people. You have to go to the hospitals. You have to go everywhere. You have to go to the agencies. Please make sure that you contact the agencies so we can get it out to our people. Because all of us deal with this 24/7, and we've been doing it for how many years? And we think, why are we educating these people again? Why are we educating these people still? And now we're gonna bring up new stuff. Well, maybe it's time to come up with the new stuff and get it wrapped around them. And the deaf population, which is gonna lead me into something else, but the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing in the state of Michigan. A lot of the older, unfortunately, we're all getting older on my end, but these younger people that are coming up, they need to absorb that. Gonna kick off of that, a lot of these, and I'm hearing that for a lot of people, the seasoned interpreters came up with deaf in their family. They came up with deaf in their neighborhood. They had friends, so on and so forth. So already had that culture a little bit before they went to college. Now we have these younger people. I think that's cool. I want to be an interpreter. I want to see my hands fly. I think that's going to be so much fun. They come in with zero capabilities. They don't have any culture. They have none of that. How hard is that for the schools and the colleges and the universities to teach that? Can you even teach that? So what are we doing about that piece? Are we leaving that just to April at LCC? Say, there you go, April, take care of it, do it. She can't. They can't. None of the universities and the colleges can do that. So what are we doing about that? We need to do something about that. Another piece, we're talking about the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. Let's talk about a census. How long ago was a census done in the state of Michigan? Long time ago. One needs to be done again. And I propose that we do one with a deaf agency or a deaf business. People that know the population that they are asking the questions of. People that can sit down with them and do it. Not through an interpreter, not through, on TV, whatever it is. We need to sit down with these people. It needs to be done. We actually applied for a grant, and unfortunately we didn't receive the grant. But I think it's very important that we get to know how many people are actually deaf, blind, and hard of hearing in the state of Michigan. We can all guess, but do we really know? And I think that and the demographics piece is just going to help Laura and you all to really do what you need to do for this. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. So the next portion of the meeting is comment.
This is Mitch speaking. Board, do you want a short 5-minute break before we go on to the online comment, public comment? I'm seeing yeses, head nodding. Okay, we'll go ahead and go for 5 minutes, 5 minute only. We'll be back. And then we will do the public comment from our online audience. Thanks.
Email. I get some. All right, thanks.
This is Colleen speaking. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Thank you. We will now take the public comment part from Zoom. So I will turn it over to Tammy Bagby to call on Zoom public comment. Thank you.
Good morning. Reminder that when you are doing public comment, I will promote you to a panelist. You will need to turn your camera on. The first hand that I see being raised is Diana McKerchick. I have promoted you to panelist. Diana, I've asked you to start your video.
One moment, the interpreter needs to get. Are we able to move Diana up so that way she's not covered up by the captions? Oh, hold on one moment. This is Mitch speaking. Do you mind trying the captioning, turning that back on? However, moving Diana up to the top? Perhaps, or no, well, either we can move Diana up, or the captioning needs to be moved up to the top. I think you can click on it and drag it.
It's not allowing me to click or
There you
drag.
go. That's exactly what we're looking for. That's perfect. Thank you. And the interpreters, are you ready? Is this better? Yes. Hello to the board. And those who are there today. I appreciate the nice 80-degree weather that I am enjoying. And I understand that you're having a bit of a cold front with the weather. Anyways, my public comment today. So as far as the different school departments that are using the different titles instead of interpreter. So we're saying perhaps they'll use the term someone who is communication specialist or communication aid. Because when I'm looking at the numbers, it seems like the numbers are small for the interpreters that the deaf individuals are seeing in the state in education. The numbers don't seem to reflect what's actually going on. And my second question is, individuals who take the BEI test, say they fail or pass, do we give them enough feedback and for them to be able to improve on their skills? Is that something that we do? So those are the two topics And then I have the third here. So when we create educational opportunities for hearing service providers or stakeholders, I do believe that we should make that information available in ASL. Because that would be good for our deaf and hard of hearing and deaf blind individuals to be able to be aware of what information and what policies are that are out there in their own language, so that we can talk about the barriers to communication access in their own language. Is that something that's possible? Also, as a person who meets a lot of interpreters and a person who is also a consumer of these services, I was never told if I was a parent, as far as the waiver goes, what exactly that impact could have on my communication access. So if I wanted to file a complaint, how do the service providers, how are they explaining that, what the waiver means, and how I would be able to file a complaint? Because how could I sign something that I don't understand? So how is that being interpreted to the consumer who's being asked to sign these waivers? So say there's no other interpreters available and they ask them to sign a piece of paper, how am I supposed to know what that is actually saying? And that's the end of my comment. And I have to tell you that it was a very, very difficult venture for me to not jump into the meeting. Thank you.
This is Tammy, we have a written comment from Lindsay Cora. Hello, what about VRI? Are they following FCC laws or Michigan interpreter laws? How can we know if they're qualified to do the job? Deaf communities hate VRI, and it is happening out there a lot, especially doctor or hospital situations. The second comment we have is from Colleen Reinhardt. I have concerns regarding the credentialing requirements or lack thereof in the VRS setting for ASL interpreters. There are individuals without credentials working in the VRS setting. These VRS interpreting encounters range in settings from social to medical, mental health, and legal, especially since the pandemic, and we have individuals who are not credentialed doing this work. I'd like the board to review this portion of the rules and regulations. That is all the online comments we currently have. Anybody who is watching virtually, if you would like to raise your hand, please do so right now. I am seeing no hands raised or additional comments in the comment section.
This is Colleen speaking. Thank you, Tammy. The next item on the agenda is announcements. Okay. So before we move to our next agenda item, I'm going to go back to Tammy Bagby and see if there's any other additional participants.
We do have a hand. Diana has raised her hand again. Diana, I am again promoting you to panelist. Okay, Diana, if you can turn on your camera and sound. Our camera. Okay, Diana, you're good now.
Okay. What am I supposed to say? I'm a little confused.
Did you have another comment?
Yes. Relating to the VRI. Personally, I've experienced the use of VRI, video remote interpreting services. Even though I did not want VRI, I had requested an in-person live interpreter 3 weeks prior. And I was told that I would have an interpreter. And then when I arrived, I was brought a VRI device, and I believe they called it Marvin. And the issue with this was the camera was not correctly, and the staff person was not aware or trained on how to use this device. And then they had the control of the remote, which meant they could decide whether or not I could communicate. So if they were to walk around or walk away from the area, they could turn off the camera or the video remote interpreting, which means I would no longer have access. So if I wanted to ask questions to the nurse or other staff that was around, I was unable to do that. And they had the control and the power of the communication, the access to communication. I did ask the interpreter that was present on the video remote interpreting system for their credentials. And the healthcare provider beforehand, they had said, you don't have to tell her because they get to decide who's qualified to do the VRI interpreting. And that was the response to me asking for the interpreter's credentialing. The interpreter was not skilled in doing ASL to English. So that is my complaint, and I agree with this, that we need to see changes into investigating on how VRI works within Michigan. If you're working in your home office, if you're working out of state. And that is all.
Thank you, Diana.
Do I put my hand down?
Yep, I will unspotlight you. Good. See, we do have 2 comments from Janet Jarrah. She does have her hand raised. She doesn't have camera, so I will read them. Number 1, requesting that the board review the acceptance of BEI credentials by proxy, such as BEI trilingual, medical, legal, and the BEI CDI when it is complete. The second comment from Janet. When agencies bid on contracts for school districts, that there is some type of criteria established by Laura in collaboration with DODDBHH, MIRID, Michigan Deaf Association. Too often agencies bid on contracts and they cannot amply deliver and meet the rules and are often banking on waivers. We have one additional comment from Miles Hudkins. I would like to piggyback Colleen Reinhardt comments and add that we also allow BRS employees to do community work outside of the BRS setting. This should also be monitored and regulated, as some of these employees do not carry the appropriate credentials to do so. He did not have access to a camera. Okay, that is all the comments I am seeing at this time.
Colleen speaking. Thank you, Tammy. So that ends the public comment portion of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is announcements. So our next regularly scheduled meeting will take place Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. Yes, Chair.
If you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt you. This is Mitch speaking. I want to have opportunity for the board to make an announcement or have a final comment before the end. Is that okay? All right. Don't feel that you must speak, but if there's any announcements that you have to make or any comments, final comments that you have, this is your chance. This is Sarah. Just something that I wanted to add that I think is important. That we hold agencies accountable for sending non-qualified interpreters to positions that they're not qualified for. I know that that is happening and agencies have no accountability. So if they should be accountable for the interpreters that they are employing and sending out. If they're providing interpreter services, they have to follow the rules and regs as well. And I know that it's happening in the medical field. I know that it's happening in the legal field, law enforcement. And who do we need to educate? Everyone. We need to educate everyone, school systems, agencies, hospitals, doctors' offices, because they are not complying with the rules and the regs. So that's all from me.
This is Miriam, speaking. My heart, goes out to where I've been spending 14 years of my life in the medical industry, in the language access field. And, just speaking a little bit to, coming from, language access department and, at the hospital where I work, emergency departments, urgent care, services have, access to, or would have access to an iPad to VRI interpreter. How do you vet? The department in charge of vetting the different vendors ask for these are the qualifications that need to be met in the state of Michigan. Vendor needs to provide, this is the number of ASL interpreters we have, and the IRD certification, interpreter training. And so when a team member, a nurse, MA provider comes in and the patient requests or had requested an in-person interpreter and is provided an iPad, a VRI interpreter, the interpreter can still ask for that in-person interpreter. The duty of that team member is to seek that service to the Department of Language Services in our hospital setting, and do the due diligence in trying to locate an interpreter in the community. We don't have one in-house, then one of the agencies. Everything to the extent to try to get somebody in person. At the very last resort, again with emergency departments and urgent care areas, then the VRI services utilized if an in-person interpreter wasn't found in a timely fashion. I would say also that when reporting, if I'm an interpreter and I'm asked for credentials and I'm not providing, that should be, it's my right to know, right, as a patient, of what credentials do you have. And the provider, there should be transparency as far as that. So just encouragement to to continue that, that culture of, with transparency and openness, sharing, these are my credentials. And if not, if there's some type of facility in trying to receive that information, then reporting that to, if it's a hospital setting, if there's a patient relations department, or if there's an actual violation of the services or your rights, then going even higher. But just making sure that we bring these things up to the attention of. So, yeah, I think it's little by little, right? With education, but also compliance. Sometimes, and I educated in the healthcare system for so long, nurses, providers, clerical team members. And I just pretty briefly, I recall during the pandemic, trying to educate nurses on how to provide the services when a patient came in. And very bluntly, just saying, why do I need to provide interpreter service if I just need to give that patient a shot? And so sometimes it's more of that defiance of, I don't want to, even though you have the interpreter or access to interpreter service. And so those are the mindsets, that even with the tools at hand, it's more of that. It's not a nice thing to do. It's not. It's more now. People tend to feel more of that compliance piece. So education is important, but also what is that consequence if we don't? If we provide education after education after education, I don't want the hospital to look at me and only when Joint Commission comes and looks at your process and what happened with this patient that didn't speak this language, did you document here? So it's creating processes to show that transparency of the services we're providing. This is healthcare and also the other services. That's my own.
This is Mitch speaking. Thank you for your comments. I think I heard and saw a common theme. Enforcement. So as Sarah and Miriam both said, yes, so you were not the first or the last to bring up the issue of enforcement. We have to have accountability for the deaf community, the deaf-blind community. They have been telling us that that is an issue, enforcement. It's very important to have the rules and the regs, but if there's no enforcement, no accountability for those, then what are they for? Am I right? We're told, I won't complain because what's the point? What's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. It's time to have teeth in the game. I don't know how else to say it, but yeah, this is Mitch speaking again. And something that has been reinforced in my memory from Diana. She will always say the law has no teeth if there's no enforcement. So yeah, we need to make sure that our law, our rules are enforced and that there's accountability to follow them. So I want to make sure that our community knows that we hear you in that theme. So thank you so much for your comments on that. My last comment is just, a thank you, gratitude to the board. Thanks for coming, using your time, taking your comments, your thoughts, your opinions. I so appreciate each of you. Thank you to the interpreting team, for interpreters here today. Thank you for the people who participated, people who came in person, those who are online, for your time. Maybe you took time off of work or you changed your schedule for today to watch our board meeting, and I thank you so much for that. And lastly, BCHS. I'm impressed. The meeting setup today, very impressive. Wow. It's clear that you received our feedback and took action. So I'm speaking for myself, but I'm used to telling you over and over, telling other places over and over and getting a head nod, but not getting any action. And clearly we needed action. So this room is just one example. The PowerPoint slides, the presentation, we saw the data that we asked for. I just feel like we had asked and said, do you mind providing that? And then you did it. And so we know that you will continue to do that. So I thank you for that, BCHS. We appreciate that. And I'm done with my comments. Go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, this is Colleen speaking. The last item on the agenda is adjournment, so.
This is Mitch speaking again. Any proposal for motion for adjournment? And Sarah said I motion for adjournment. Second, Barbara has seconded. Vote supporting adjournment. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The meeting is now adjourned at 12 o'clock, 12 noon. Thank you so much.